WDON1204.com. Community focused, globally connected. Find us online at Coleman Global. WDON is proud to present our latest podcast, The Colors of Sound. Our mission is to create a safe space for community members from around the world to share their personal stories. Listen on all streaming platforms or on our podcast station, WDON1204.com. The Colors of Sound podcast. Discover how much we have in common. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Colors of Sound podcast. I'm Timothy Stone Dancer Coleman. I have the honor of introducing you to Joanne Coleman. She is my auntie. She is more than just my auntie. She is a published author. She is a mom. She is a mentor. She is an educator. She is a community activist. And she is here with us today to talk with us about life, love, and all things art. Auntie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here. I love you. I'm so glad you invited me.
Thank you. I love you as well. And so, this is going to be a wonderful conversation where we're going to introduce folks a little bit to your past and where you're from and how you grew up. We're going to then talk to folks a little bit about what's happening for you right now in your life. And then, because I believe in teachable moments, I believe that sometimes people need to know about vision and what we plan or hope or have faith for that is coming in the future for our life. And, so I want to jump right in and say, where were you born? Where are you from originally?
I'm from Philadelphia originally. Yep. Lived there for, pretty much until I was about 30 years old. Yeah.
Okay. Now, it just so happens Philly is one of my most favorite places to visit. I didn't know until we started talking about you being on the show. I didn't know that you were from Philly. And I used to go to Philadelphia for probably about like a 5 or 6 year span. I was there twice a year. And at one point, when I very first went there, I was performing, and I just felt like, sometimes cities have these cliches, like, Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love, right?
Mhm.
And, sometimes you go to a place and it's not what the tagline is, but I
Mhm.
really felt comfortable there, right? Like I really felt like it was clean. It was like a real comfortable, like kind of environment. How did growing up in Philadelphia impact how you saw the world?
Well, I think growing up in the city is so much different than growing up in the suburbs. My experience in the city was, we were kids playing on the sidewalk,
Right,
hopscotch and, throwing balls in the air and doing all the sorts of things, riding our bikes. Just, we were outside all the time. And
right.
it was just a great childhood. It was a great childhood. I have an older brother and a younger sister, and we did things together, and we had amazing parents, just amazing parents who were exemplars for us
Mhm.
in a very, very good way. So yeah, so I enjoyed it. Well, while I was growing up, it was fun. It was fun.
That's cool. And so with let's talk about your parents for a moment. Were
Sure.
they both from that area? Like what was a little bit about their background and, also include what was what is your faith?
Okay, so my parents were, excuse me, they've passed, but they were staunch, very strict Catholic, Italian Catholic family. Their parents were born in Italy, in Abruzzi, Italy, in Calabrese, and um, when two families, my father's and my mother's, traveled and came to Ellis Island and landed in Philadelphia. They lived a mile from each other. And so they became friends, they became family. Then my mom and dad got married. And so my upbringing is strictly Italian Catholic. And if you know anything about Italian parents, they're very strict. They're very strict. My mom more so than my dad. Yeah. He's a little bit lenient.
Okay, okay. So when mom laid the law, you could go around and say, "What did you have him wrapped around your finger? Were you daddy's
Well, I
girl?"
wouldn't say that. I would not say that. Maybe as an adult I did, but the thing with me and my siblings is we were never punished, we were never hit because we never wanted to disappoint our parents. And
Mm.
my dad had this thing where if something was not going the way he wanted it to go, his eyebrow will lift up and we'd be like, okay, okay, I'm done. We just didn't
And
want to disappoint. We didn't want to
right.
disappoint.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's so different today, right? Because I share that same type of thing, my parents
Yeah.
and my father before he passed, and we're a church family as well.
Right.
And I remember in church, anytime you get the giggles or you want to chat with your friend or whatever, mom would
Yes.
just kind of like lean forward, and it was just that little bit of head tilt, right? And she would look
Uh-huh.
around and make sure that she pierced her energy right through you, so you knew better, and you knew to straighten up. So I definitely
Well,
get that.
my mom did the pinch. So we were pinched on the leg or the arm and it hurt. So we knew this is not we would, if we were to reach for the last bit of food, we'd get a pinch on the arm like crazy. Like, you are not do that. You are not. So yeah,
I love it. I love it.
yeah,
And every family has its dynamic, right?
yes,
And one of the things that I love is that there are so many things that sometimes when I'm talking to people now, there are so many things that I repeat that were quotes that dad used to say that
hmm,
maybe growing up, I didn't necessarily understand the fullness of what he was talking about.
right.
And, you know, one of those favorite phrases, he used to say, a man with no focus is confused, but a man with
Mhm.
no vision is lost. And it takes me back to what I was saying in the beginning about like as we look to the future and as we have faith about what God is going to bring into fruition in our lives. I think now I'm able to more fully understand vision, and having grown up around two parents that had vision and that kind of like spoke vision onto our lives. Now I'm
Yes.
really grateful for that upbringing. But when we're teenagers, like we're just growing up, and it's like you say, we're just siblings playing on the street and playing jacks and hopscotch and all the
Mhm.
things, and enjoying
Right,
ourselves, right?
right, right.
And I know that a lot of that was like my father and Uncle Ron, their parents, like what they
Hmm.
instilled in them as they were growing up. So
Right.
I want to talk a little bit about when you met Uncle Ron, right?
Okay.
Were you already living in Ohio? Like, how did you guys meet?
Yes. Yes. I was living in Ohio. I moved to Ohio in 1989 and with my ex husband and my three children. And 3 years later, we were divorced for reasons I'd rather not talk about. But
Yeah,
it was a very challenging divorce. It was a long divorce. And then for 3 years, it was just me and my youngest son, Andrew. And I said, I don't need anybody. I'm just going to be with Andrew and we're going to do our thing. And I had blessedly gotten a full time management position at Miami Valley Hospital in the cardiology department. I was a manager there. And everybody kept talking about this guy called Coach. Everybody loved Coach. He was great. Everybody loved him. And but I knew one thing: he was dating. He was dating one of the lab techs at the time. So I
okay.
never really met him, but we were at a barbecue one time for the hospital staff, like the department staff, and I saw him, and I was
Uh-huh.
like, "Oh my God, this guy, he is like crazy handsome, crazy." Your uncle was handsome. He was
Yes, he
dapper.
was. Yes, he
He
was.
was
He
dapper.
carried it.
He carried it. He did. And I thought, man, I wish I could meet somebody like that. Well, we wound up going to another house party and he was there and he started circling around me, and he was with the girl that he was dating or supposedly dating. And I said, I don't understand what you're doing here. You're with Lori. And he said, no, he said, we're just friends. I like to get to know you. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't think that's such a good idea since I work with her. And so on my way out of that party, he slipped me his phone number. And
Mm,
he said, call me and we can meet for coffee or a drink or something. So I hesitated, I waited. And my daughter, Kristen, I told her, and she said, Mom, go and listen to his story. You know, maybe they are just friends. You never know. So I called him and I said, do you remember me? And he said, well, how can I not remember you? And I thought, okay, that's slick. That's really slick. So we met for a drink at the Peerless Mill, where we eventually got married, and we fell in love from that evening on. It was like it truly was like love at first sight, and he had all the qualities that in that short amount of time I realized that he had all the qualities that I had wanted in my life for me. Yeah.
that's so
Yeah.
sweet. That's a great
Yeah.
story.
Well, you know, Tim, and this is the funny one of the little things that he did that made me realize that after we had a drink at the Peerless Mill, we went to the Argon District where he lived, and we went to another restaurant, and we were sitting at the bar, and this guy came up beside me, and Ron was talking to someone else, but he knew that there was a guy next to me trying to get in to talk to me. And he gently placed his hand on my knee and squeezed it as if to say, I'm here.
That's
And
right.
that spoke volumes to me. I felt so safe.
Mm,
And that's the way he's made me feel all of our life together, safe and secure and loved. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
powerful. That's
I'll
powerful.
never forget that. Never.
I think a
Mm.
lot of people long to be with someone where you know if you're in a room with someone, whether they're looking at you or not, no matter what's going on, they got you. How many children do you have?
So I have three, and your Uncle Ron had three, of course, and you know them. My oldest son, Matthew, right now he's 51, and then Kristen is 48. She'll be 49 in June. She lives in Columbus, and Matthew lives in Centerville, 2 miles from me, 3 miles from me. So it's great.
Nice.
And Andrew lives in Arizona. He has three successful restaurants out there. So if you're ever in AZ, Phoenix area,
Yes.
you need to go. And he's my baby. I love him dearly. I love all my children. They've been so supportive for me. I don't know what I would do without them. And then, of course, Uncle Ron had Susan, Kyle, and Kurt, and they're
Right.
amazing kids. And when we got married, it became a blended family with challenges. Of course, it always is when there's an ex involved, and but we managed to get past those in a very unified way,
Hmm.
because our ultimate goal was to have this family who would be Christ oriented, Christ centered, and love each other. And we
Yes.
truly were blessed that that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
So if you don't mind, if there is a story in this next question, because this isn't something that I thought about until you just gave that response, is did you and Uncle Ron have any challenges during the time period when you met of a black man and an Italian woman being together? Did you guys face any challenges from that type of union?
Tim, your uncle was always very aware of people around him and people looking at us,
Hmm.
and he would, not very often, but sometimes he would say, that lady over there is not very doesn't think this is a good idea. And I would say, what are you talking about? I didn't notice anything. So for the most part, it was not difficult for us. It wasn't. My family was so open and loving. They adored him from the moment they met him, just adored him. And he adored them. And my siblings fell in love with him. My friends fell in love with him. And there was everything to love and nothing to gripe about.
Right.
So I feel very blessed and fortunate that we did not have that. Every once in a while, people would stare, but
Right.
I think we made a beautiful couple, and that was how we felt about ourselves.
You feel like when you were raising your children, did you have some of the same types of rules, or did you raise them with the same kind of values that you feel like you were raised with?
Yeah, on the funny side of it, I do remember saying to my kids, well, you'll know when you're a parent, that kind of thing, because I always heard that from my mom. Well, you'll find out what it's like when you're a parent. But oddly enough, my children give me so much credit for allowing them to be independent of me. I always taught them to take care of themselves, and I always gave them a, a, a wide range of choices within a structure, and
Mm.
they always acknowledged that being so good for them because they were able to make choices within the boundaries that I gave them. And I think it's important for kids to make choices, but they have to be within boundaries. And that's where they learn best.
That's a huge teachable moment in that, ensuring that the boundaries are clear, all of those things make you more well-rounded.
I look at my kids' success and, I don't want to take credit for it, but what I take credit for is that they were able to go and be successful because of how I raised them. So I think that that's an important aspect. Oh, thank
I do think parents should take more credit when all of the labor and the silent tears and the silent prayers and
you.
the nudging and the small seeds that you try
Mhm.
and plant, in your children's lives, when
Yes.
all those things kind of do work out, I do believe you should take more credit for it, because nobody, I say this to folks all the time, when to young people, when I'm doing workshops, and they talk about, the people they idolize, and they're talking about so and so just won a Grammy, and so is this famous
Yeah.
actress, and so,
Yeah.
and I said, but nobody gets to the microphone by themselves.
Right. Right.
There are mentors,
Yeah.
managers,
Teachers.
teachers,
Hmm.
community members. Like,
Yes.
nobody gets to that level of quote unquote success alone. And so I think we have to pay more homage to those who played that powerful of a role, especially our parents,
Hmm.
in our lives.
Yes. Yes.
Welcome to The Gladly, a contemporary neighborhood eatery nestled in the heart of Central Phoenix. Here, local chef Bernie Cantat crafts flavorful new American cuisine blended with innovation and tradition. At The Gladly, every dish is a celebration of taste, paired with the extensive beverage program boasting over 350 whiskeys. Join us and savor the magic of The Gladly, where every meal is an experience and every visit a memory. Share your story on the Colors of Sound podcast. Our mission is to create a safe space for community members from around the world to share their unique stories. Do you have an interesting story to share? Or perhaps a journey of triumph from a challenge that you faced? Do you want the world to know about your talent? Visit our website and complete our guest intake form at wdon1204.com. The Colors of Sound podcast. Discover how much we have in common.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Timothy Stone Dancer Coleman here with the Colors of Sound podcast. This is our interview with my auntie, Miss Joanne Coleman, published author, mom, community activist, educator, and so much more. I want to take a moment, Aunt Joanne, and talk to you a little bit about your book. So for anyone that doesn't know, let's give them just a general overview before we go into a lot of detail. Let's give them a general overview of what happened to cause you to write this book.
Okay, sure. So in May of 2014, I was diagnosed with lung cancer. And I was a non-smoker, so nobody expected to find lung cancer on me. But they found it inadvertently through a CAT scan on my abdomen because I was having some abdominal problems. And so they called and said, there's everything's good with your abdomen, but there's a spot on the back of your right lung. And I'm like, okay. And the nurse said, well, were you sick? Did you have a virus? Did you have pneumonia? And I said, no. And so the radiologist never said this is suspicious, nothing. They just kept suggesting another scan and another scan. So the scans actually started in March. And then in May, they finally, my family doctor said, look, we're not going to play around with this. You know, it's probably rare that you have lung cancer, but we're not going to play around with it. He set me up with a pulmonologist. I had a biopsy, and I was, and I say in my book, I was in the worst possible place to hear the worst possible news. I was at Walmart shopping, food shopping, because I had to get out of the house because I was waiting for that phone call. And
Right.
he called me right in the middle of the freezer section, and he said, I'm really sorry to say this on the phone, but it's cancer. And it's the non smoking type of cancer that women your age kind of are starting to get. And I said, well, is it curable? And he said, well, it depends on whether it's in the rest of your body or not. So we'll do a PET scan. So long story short, they did the PET scan. It wasn't anywhere else, thank God. And they set me up for surgery. So I had a 6-hour robotic surgery to remove this bottom part of my right lung. And I recuperated actually that whole year it took me. However, when before my surgery, I was still teaching, and one of my students came in with a gift, and it was a leather bound journal. And she said, Miss Coleman, my mom said that she thought you might like to write about your journey. And I said, well, what a beautiful gift. So she gave that to me, and I actually not dedicated, but I mentioned her in my book. Sweet, sweet student. And I started writing every day. And it's very raw, it's very honest, it's pitiful, it's sometimes joyful, it's sometimes hopeful, but it's every feeling that I had every day. And so I would show it to Uncle Ron, and he would read it, and he'd say, you have to make this a book. You have to. I'm like, I am not an author. I'm not going to make this a book. This is personal. This is my story. This is me. But the more I wrote, Tim, the more I realized the gifts that cancer gave me. And that
Mm.
sounds really ridiculous to say, but you're closest to God when you're suffering. And in that time period, although I've always been a Christ follower, it hit me like a ton of bricks that this is it. I'm going to die, and I'm going to know God, and I am going to listen to his word. I'm going to read his word. I'm going to pray every day, and I'm going to be hopeful. And so every day I made an entry, and I attached a verse to it that was appropriate for me that day. And I sent the manuscript to an old mentor of mine, a professor from my undergrad, who's a dear, dear friend, and he has a small publishing company. And I sent it to him thinking, oh, he's going to say, this is ridiculous. Come on. But he texted me back, my God, this is amazing. We have got to publish this book. He said, which really hit me hard. He said, my wife died of ovarian cancer, and the only thing I have left of her is a list of doctor's appointments. She would never share anything about how she felt. He said, we have got to publish this book. And so the book was published. Yeah. First time through him on Amazon. And then most recently it was picked up by Higher Ground Books and Media. Love that company. It's a very Christian based company because my mentor, he retired.
You dropped a few $1 million nuggets in that explanation, right? So I don't want
Right.
to push past a couple of these things. Like I think we need to like lean into a couple of those things. The gifts that cancer gave me. Everybody on the planet has been programmed that that particular word is the beginning of an endless autumn, right? Like
Yeah.
an endless, here are the clouds, here's the rain, we're moving into the darkness of winter, and you need to wrap things up as best you can because you don't
Yes.
know, no matter what the doctor says, how long you've got left, right?
That's
Like that's
exactly
the
right. Hmm.
very ominous way that
Yeah.
word cancer hits everyone. You are different. I want to start with that. You're a different type of person in that you acknowledge that there were gifts inside of this diagnosis.
Yes.
I want to support that by saying, when I read the book, I'm a very visual person.
Hmm.
And I was visualizing each of these scenes that you're talking about as you are going into surgery, as you are waking up, coming out of surgery, as you are realizing all the different things that are plugged into your body, as you are
Hmm.
trying to
Breathe.
put your just breathe. Like, I mean, like at the very basic
Literally.
level,
Literally.
literally just breathe. And the
Yeah.
newfound pain that came with each inhale.
Yes.
But what you do is you are giving scripture, you are giving positivity. Like each thing is raw. Some of it made me like extremely nervous. Like if I didn't know you and know that we would be having this conversation, or know that I could reach out and send you a text message or call, I'd be like, oh my God, did she make it? Oh my God, did she? Like every page, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Because
Wow.
we don't usually read something that is, how you have said it already, something that is so raw,
Yeah.
something that is so honest and unfiltered. However, it's simultaneously so faithful and so hopeful,
Yes.
right? And it doesn't mean that there weren't moments of despair. It doesn't mean that there weren't moments of question. It doesn't mean that there weren't times when you're like, I don't even know. Like, I'm just here right now, and today is just going to be today.
Yeah. That's right.
But that's all wrapped around your faith. What would be something that you would say to folks on that first day of diagnosis?
So the first day is the worst day, of course. Um, I remember coming home from that store and just getting out of the car and dropping to my knees in my garage. And Uncle Ron came out to meet me, and he and I cried. And I said, I've got cancer. I've got cancer. And he took me into the house and he sat me down, and I cried and cried and cried. I said, I'm going to die. We've got to tell the kids I'm going to die. And he let me cry for a little bit, and he said, okay, that's it. That's it. You are blessed because you have people around you. You have me, you have your family. I know people who have nobody and have cancer. Nobody. So let's move on with getting you, you know, getting your surgery, doing what you need to do to heal. And
Hmm.
from that moment on, although I still had bad days, as evident in the book that I journaled every day, but from that moment on, I realized the selfishness of me thinking that, I have all these people around me that love me and are going to give me support and are going to take care of me and are going to be with me. And most of all, I had Uncle Ron. And he literally dressed my wounds, gave me a shower. He did everything for me, everything. He would not let me miss a nap. He was just perpetually looking after me. So I realized that that's a gift. That's a gift I didn't realize I had. That's one of the gifts. The other gift is it brought me closer to Christ, even more so. And that's certainly a gift that, allow me to approach the throne of grace, like I say in the book, with confidence and with hope that I was going to be okay. Yeah.
So one of the other points I wanted to make about the book is that it's not just like, this is a book that's also good for people who are related to someone who has a cancer
Yeah.
diagnosis.
Yes. Yes.
What do you
Absolutely.
feel about
Yes.
that? How do you feel about that?
Um, you know, um, I think that when Uncle Ron read it, when it was finally published and he read it through, I think he realized the value that I had in him in my life
Mm,
at that point. And I think that family needs to realize that they are valuable to that person, and
right.
that that person is going to rely on you to mentally help them, emotionally help them, physically help them, and spiritually help them. Um, it's you're right. The book is very, very raw, and it might even be uncomfortable for some people to read.
Hmm.
I know I've had friends that have had cancer and they said they couldn't get through it. You know, not anything against my writing, but they couldn't get through it. And I understand that because it's very, very raw. Yes.
Well, because you know what, and I guarantee you it's not because of your writing. I don't have cancer. I, none of those things. And even for me at one point, I put the book down for a second
Mhm.
because I said, wow, like with all of the things that are happening in the world, with all of the things that are always trying to steal our focus, with all of the things that we think are important, and we're trying to get the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, we've got a tremendous amount of our fellow global citizens who are going through things that
Mhm.
are forcing them to think minute by minute, day
Yes.
by day.
Mhm.
And it's not so easy to go to just any person on the planet and say, okay, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years? In some cases, it's like, well, I don't know. Like, where do I see myself in 30 minutes?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Right? And
Yeah.
so I would say, once I picked the book back up, like I had to come to terms with honesty. I feel like there are other stories that we've seen on television, like everything rushes the actual experience. Usually in a movie, think about it. The last time, like, name any movie that you've seen somebody and they've been diagnosed with cancer, and it's always the same thing. The family shows up, everybody's crying, there's a lot of sadness, everybody's trying to rally around so and so, and then the next scene they're at the funeral,
Yes.
right? Like
Right.
we're not even trained
Right.
to think that there's something on the other side,
That there's a hope. Exactly. Yes.
that
And I
there's a
think,
hope.
yes, that there's a hope. I think that one of the greatest gifts it gave me was a laser sharp focus, on who I was, what was happening to me, and my surroundings and my family. Because we go through life sometimes and you're like, oh yeah, yeah, that's my cousin, that's my nephew, that's my father, that's my husband. But we don't really have a sharp focus on that person and what that person means to us. And I think that that's one of the greatest gifts it gave me, an
That
appreciation
is
for
so
that.
powerful. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some other really good stuff. I'm not even going to let folks know what it's going to be. I want them to hang with bated breath until we come right back. Folks, thank you so much
Okay.
for listening today. We'll be right back with more with Joanne Coleman right after this.
Check your pulse and turn off your phone. Get ready to be entertained. The Bronx Education is back, and we've got more youth voices, educational partnerships, exciting global discoveries with Alexi Gingertopoulos, dollar store science experiments with Dr. Whitey Black, and tons of ways for you to engage with us as we bring laughter and knowledge right to your doorstep. Me and the crew welcome you to Season 3 of The Bronx Education. The new season of The Bronx Education is here. Every Monday at 4:30 p.m. on Channel 67 Optimum, 2133 Fios.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Timothy Stone Dancer Coleman. We're here with the Colors of Sound. We are talking to my auntie, Joanne Coleman. We just had an amazing segment about her book, One Day in May, and her cancer diagnosis and the path that she was on with really her faith walk and her coming out on the other side of that diagnosis. Appreciate that you were so honest and willing to share, how supportive Uncle Ron was for you during that period of time.
Mhm.
But now I want to shift gears just a little bit, right? Because life is happening simultaneously, right? There's always something going on, and
Yes.
you accomplish one thing, or you get over one thing, or you move past one thing, and then here's something else to greet you, at the next doorbell ring.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about Uncle Ron and his diagnosis, um, and kind of how the things that were happening to his health, how that all played into not only the span of time that was really honestly still during like the edge of your recovery time, right? When that first
Yes.
kind of
Most
settled
of it.
in. So what was going on? What happened like soon after that?
So, well, back in 2006, he was diagnosed with breast cancer. And he went on a mission to spread awareness for men's breast cancer. And then he had a mastectomy, and he had 4 rounds of chemo, which he tolerated very, very well. And I felt like he didn't even need my help with anything because there was nothing I could do for him. He was totally independent. So he recovered from that. And then after my lung cancer, well, let me go back to 1998 because he was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy, which is 33% deadly, 33% paralyzing, and 33% maybe you're going to recover. He was the 33% that recovered. So he got over that, and then he had the cancer. And so now, after my diagnosis, he had DVTs, blood clots in his legs. He had knee surgery. He was diagnosed in March of 2021 with Addison's disease, which is a hormonal and metabolic disease that messes you up. And so you have to be on prednisone every day. And then he had a thyroid problem, and he had to have thyroid surgery. And then he got breast cancer again on the other side. So so he had a biopsy, he had a lumpectomy, he had 3 or 4 surgeries the summer before he passed. And so the last one was a right side mastectomy. They took off his breast, and he was fine. As always, he comes out on the other side of everything like a Superman. And so he went back to school after Labor Day, and on September 6th, he came home from school. He said, "I'm really, really tired." And I said, "Well, I understand that. You're tired every day. Go take your nap." It's first day with kids. And he said, "No, it's different. It's my head is tired. It's a tired head." And I said, "Well, just go take your nap, and I'm going to exercise class when I come back. We'll see what's going on." So usually when I come back from my exercise class every afternoon, he's sitting up in the sofa and watching TV and waiting for me to come home to ask me how my workout was. So I came home that day, and he was not on the sofa. And I thought, that's really weird. He must really be tired. Those kids must really have done something to him. So I went back to the bedroom, and he was kind of semi-sleeping, and he started to mumble a little. I thought, well, I'll just let him sleep a little bit longer. He deserves it. And I went and took a shower, and I came out, and he was mouthing something to me. And I thought, what? And I started to get annoyed. I go, "What are you saying? What's wrong with you?" And he was trying to say, "How was your workout?" But he couldn't get it out. And I realized at that moment, okay, something is wrong. Drop the towel, get on the phone. I did all the signs for a stroke, and they were all positive. Called 911, even while he was motioning to me, no squad, as is just like him.
That would be just like him, yes.
The squad came. They assessed him as an active stroke, took him to Miami Valley South. I called my son Matt right away, and he and Leslie and my grandson met me at the hospital, and they said, "Well, we found a blood clot in his right carotid artery. It's huge, and we're going to care flight him to downtown." And I thought, okay, I worked in a hospital long enough to know that care flight is not a good word to use when it's your family. So we all hightailed it downtown to Miami Valley Hospital, Maine, and he was in surgery for about a good 2.5, 3 hours. They did an intricate surgery, which probably, based on what my doctor says, should have killed him. So the stroke was a massive stroke. He had the stroke. It was a massive stroke. And then he spent some time in neuro ICU. He spent a few days in the step-down unit. Then they sent him to the rehab center. But his whole left side was paralyzed. He couldn't use it. He couldn't raise his arm. He couldn't do anything. And he had a very flat affect. So it was very, very sad and very heavy. And he was good for a little bit, and he did some therapy, but he just couldn't do it. He just couldn't do it. And the conundrum is, when you have brain damage, if you sleep, your brain is healing. But if you sleep, you're not doing physical therapy, so you're not healing. So that was, yeah. So, so then, like 4 days later, after he was admitted to rehab, he wanted to go back to bed and sleep, sleep, sleep. That's all he wanted to do. And I sat by his side. He took a nap. When he woke up, he said, I have a really bad headache. And I thought, my gosh, what's that about? I scrambled out to get a nurse, a doctor, anybody. By that time, he was writhing in pain, just holding a pillow, writhing back and forth. His eye, he kept saying his eye, his eye. And I went, I said, look, we have to get a doctor in here right now. And right before that doctor came in, he mouthed to me, I love you. And he was gone. He went unconscious. They couldn't revive him. So they ambulanced him to Kettering Hospital, where he was pronounced brain dead from a massive bleed that went down to his brainstem, all across his brain to his brainstem. They showed us the CAT scan. It was really bad. And so he was on a ventilator, and the doctor said there was nothing we could do. Any intervention would have made him worse. He said, so what do you want to do? And I said, I'm his, durable power of attorney. But what do I want to do? I know what he wouldn't want to do. And he would not want to live like a vegetable on a ventilator. So I said, he said, well, we can let him go organically. We can't take the ventilator out for 48 hours based on Ohio state law. I guess that gives time for family to come in. So they sent him to the ICU, and they said, he's not going to make it even a day. Everybody came in, the family came in, the kids flew in. We were all there, and he passed away organically at 5:30 the next evening. We watched his heart rate go down. We watched his blood pressure go down, and it was tough, Tim. It was very, very tough. Very tough.
Yeah, I mean that's very heavy, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that it was interesting to me about the experience that he went through is that he was actually cured from cancer, correct? Like once he had
Yes.
that second
Yes.
mastectomy, like he didn't
Yes.
die from cancer. He didn't die
Yeah.
from breast cancer.
Yeah.
It was from the blood clot and from the
Yes.
brain bleed. Like it was a whole
Yes.
other thing that happened.
Yes. Yes. They think that during the surgery for his mastectomy, a blood clot through and went into his carotid artery, and they couldn't use a what do you call it, thrombolytic, because he was on Xarelto, which is a thrombolytic, and that is probably the reason why the brain bleed was so massive. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's
Yeah.
heavy, right?
It is.
And yeah, no, I mean like, and this is real life, right?
This is real
This is
life.
what
Yes.
happens. And so, in the aftermath, and Uncle Ron passed away when was this?
September 21st, he was declared dead, but I really feel like he passed away the 20th in that rehab center when he went unconscious. There was no
Yes.
response, not at all, not to pain stimuli, nothing. Yeah.
And so how does one, because there's a grieving process,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And I know that there's a lady in my building who lost her husband not too long ago. And, there was a period of about, I don't know, 2 or 3 months where I didn't see her at all, right?
Mhm.
And they're a little bit older. And one day I saw her while I was walking my dogs, and she was kind of like looking down at the ground, and she happened to look up and see me, and I said, "Hey, it's so great to see you outside. I'm so grateful to just see you. Like, how are you? How are you doing?" And she said, "Everybody's telling me I have to just get over it." And I said, "Well, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. You don't need to get over it. You need to get through it,
Yes.
right? Because
Yes.
you can't forget how much your husband loved you. You can't forget how
Right.
much you guys meant to each other." And then, as a little bit of Coleman humor, which thank God it worked out, I said, you can't forget how much he used to get on your nerves. I said, so, and if she starts laughing and she, it brings a smile to her face, and she was like, nobody said anything like that to me. I said, it's okay to love and to grieve and to
Yes.
let your time be your own.
Yeah, because there's old sayings, time heals all wounds, you'll get over it, you'll meet somebody else, whatever. First of all, half of me was ripped apart. So I'm not whole. I'm half right now. I
Right.
don't know who I am. I don't know who I'm going to be. I don't know what my purpose is, and I don't know what to do without him. So when half of you is ripped apart, it's like you fall into a million pieces and none of them can fit back like a puzzle. There's a piece missing and it's going to disrupt the whole puzzle. And that's the way it is for me now. So grieving is going to be my lifelong process. I read something where it said grief comes like waves of an ocean. You can't stop that. You have to learn how to swim. And that's what you have to learn to do. I have to learn how to swim through these waves because if I don't, I might be like your neighbor who stays in the house for months. I did not do that. I was in a numb state, a fugue. The first couple months, I got things done, lickety split. Everything had to be done, had to be done, had to be done. Very,
Right.
logistically, everything had to be done. The funeral, the bills, the finances, the life insurance, all that. It's horrible. But then after that fugue leaves you, the acute awareness of what just happened to you is like the stark reality. It's like a nightmare you keep waking up to instead of from. And
Right.
that's when it hits you. That's when the tears keep flowing. That's when the memories won't stop. That's when you look around this house, and every inch of this house is him. Everything he's done, everything he's, fixed, everything is him. The flowers out back, the flowers out front, the work that he did in the house. And it's hard to get away from that, but yet I don't want to get away from it.
Right.
And
Right.
and believe it or not, and I was talking to another widow about this at my grief share group. I feel close to him when I'm grieving and crying. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it brings him alive for that moment that I'm
Mm.
crying and weeping for him and missing him. And I never want that to end. So, will I get over it? No, I will not get over it. I might get better as my days progress and I begin to have hope that things are going to be okay. And I get over the fear of now I have to do that myself. Now, there are so many secondary losses, a million little things that pop up now that I never even realized he did that all. So those are the things that hold you in grief. They kind of lock you in that state. So you can't get out even if you try. But the best you can do is swim. That's the best you can do.
You don't realize, in a real partnership, there are some things that the other person naturally takes care of that
Mhm.
never crosses your mind. You don't think about it. It's like
Right.
this just happens, right? Like it's
It's
like
done.
magic, right? Like I'm not going to think about the garbage because it's never going to be there anyway. Like
Yeah.
it's done,
Yeah.
right? Because that's what the other
Exactly.
person always took care of, right? And then all
Yes.
of a sudden
Yes.
you come into the kitchen and it's like, why is there a full thing of garbage? Like, oh,
Yeah.
wait a minute,
Yeah.
now I got to do it.
Yes.
And I know that
Yeah.
that's reducing what you're saying to like something really, really small, but I
But it isn't.
understand, right?
Mm.
But I understand what you're saying in that, you stumble upon new discoveries every day of the
Yes.
things that were just happening around you and you weren't even taking them for granted. This is different, right? There are
Yes.
some things
Right.
that people just
Right.
take for granted. These
Yes.
are things that are just a function of a couple of a life,
Yes.
right? This is
Right.
just life function. And now all of a sudden it's like, okay, wait a minute, shoot, I better go do this. Like, wait a minute, I got to build this into my day now. And what I
Yes.
appreciate is that you haven't stopped. You're still going, you're still
Yeah.
pushing, you're still moving forward, and you're not seeking to get over anything. You're
Mm-mm.
seeking to go through it. And you
Yes.
also are with your faith in that walk. You are also with God in
Yes.
that walk,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Definitely.
There are
Definitely.
people who will blame God for these types of things,
Mm-mm.
and that's another form of isolation. That's your spiritual isolation,
Hmm.
right? So what
That's
would you
right.
say to someone, and even if you want to talk about, like, how did you get to the point where you were okay going and joining a group about, and say, like, what is that even about? Like, what does that look like?
So, right after the his service, about a week later, I met up with our pastor, and he said, "I want to sign you up for Grief Share here at church." And I said, "Okay," and that was very raw at the time. He had just passed, but I was willing to do that because I knew I needed help. I needed to be with some other people who were going through what I was going through. My family was fantastic. They were wonderful. They were so supportive. But nobody can understand what losing the love of your life can mean unless they've lost it. And so I started going to Grief Share, and I'm actually going to be starting my third session. They're 13 weeks each. I'm going to be starting my third session the end of this month. It has helped me tremendously, tremendously. It has saved my life. I mean, when I tell you the highlight of my week was going to my Grief Share therapy group, that's,
Mhm.
you know, not many people will want to say that, but it's true. It's exactly true. And I would tell them that. I said, look, today's the highlight of my week. But you get to share things that you just can't really share with anybody who isn't going through it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, I mean, I would recommend that to anyone who's lost a spouse, lost a child, lost a parent, whoever you lose. You need that, and it's a very spiritual program. It's Bible based, so it encourages you even more. There's so much hopefulness in it, that you experience when you're talking to other people. You're hearing, even if you don't want to share, you're hearing things that you're feeling, and you're like, "Oh my God, yes, that's exactly the way I feel." So it's been
There's
it's been life saving for me.
that's amazing. There's a power in removal of the feeling of isolation.
Yes, yes,
And I think when we lean into isolating ourselves off from the world and from people that we love or people who care about us or, positivity in general, and when we isolate ourselves from that experience,
yeah,
it allows darkness to multiply.
yes,
Because
absolutely.
in the absence of light, that darkness is growing and growing and growing, and you're running your mind in a million decathlons, you know,
Yeah,
all spinning and spiraling.
yes,
But the minute you pierce through that with just a little bit of light, a little bit
yeah,
of opening
right.
yourself up just enough to even
A
be in the
glimmer.
room,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Like you're
right.
saying, like even if you don't want to talk, you're hearing other people
Yes,
that you
and
don't
you're
even
gleaning
know,
some. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
right?
You're gleaning some knowledge and wisdom from another person who's going through the same thing that you might have not even thought about. You know, I'll tell you what really is helping me: writing. I'm
Mm,
I'm writing every day. I'm
mm,
writing poetry because I know I sent you my poetry of the poetry of grief manuscript, and I'm still working on that. That has given me such feeling of a release, I guess is the word for it, because all those things I'm thinking in my head, I'm putting down on paper. And, I write to him every day about, things that are happening, how I feel, how I miss him. And believe me, Tim, I will be sobbing writing these things. There will be tears on my paper and when I reread them, I'm sobbing because I can't believe that I'm in this situation. I can't believe that God put me here, but He put me here for a reason. That I do believe. I'm I'm struggling to know what that reason is, but this is what they say, like the song, I will serve you while I wait. And so while I'm waiting for him to tell me, I want to help other people. I want to further Ron's legacy of helping other people because that's what he did best. That's what he did best.
Listen, there's a double whammy, right? Because there is Uncle Ron's legacy, and there is, that Coleman thing of being a servant of the community, and of, wanting the best for other people and being there to mentor other folks, and, sharing the things that you've learned in a way that is impactful to each individual and the whole kind of simultaneously. But then there's also your own legacy. And that is one of the things that I wanted to make sure
Mm.
that we speak about before we end this interview,
Yeah,
is that
definitely.
your own legacy of what you went through is so extremely, the depth of it, right? That faith walk and that moment by moment. There's a misconception in my. This is completely my own opinion, but I believe that there's a misconception that when you believe in God, when you have faith, that no matter what happens, you're just like, okay, well, everything's going to work out.
Mhm.
There are so many things between "I love you,
Yeah.
Lord" and "it's
Yes.
going to work out."
Yes. There's the
All of
questions. Why?
humanity,
Why? Yes. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
all of humanity is between
Yes.
the
Yeah.
ends of that spectrum.
The puzzles of your life are between those two things. Yes. Out, walking through it is very, very hard and challenging. And at church this morning they were talking about First Peter 4 and suffering. How suffering is what we were meant to do because Christ suffered for us. So, and here's my testimony, but he was with me every step of the way. Here's the thing. Somebody said in Grief Share, well, why doesn't God answer our prayers? And I got to thinking about that. And I came home and I thought, let me write down how many times he answered my prayers that I didn't even know were answered at the time. And I had a list of things, a list of things.
Mhm.
So, some people get angry at God. I've never been angry at God. I remember your Uncle Ron on his deathbed saying, I never asked God why. I thank God I'm still alive. That's the way he was. That's the
Wow,
way he was. Yeah.
wow. It's such a easy fallback to get angry,
Yes.
um, to lean into your anger, to give yourself more reasons to be angry,
Right. Permission to
with
be
God,
angry. Yes. Mhm.
right? Permission to be angry. But I think it's revolutionary to give yourself permission to grieve, to
Mhm.
still love, to
Mhm.
still appreciate, to still keep going, like every day, taking that one step. If all you can accomplish is one
Yes.
thing today,
Yes.
it's the one thing you needed to accomplish today.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
that's
And
what
I,
was meant
I,
to happen.
yeah, I do that every day. I said, okay, I did that. I took the car to get washed. I never did that before, but hey, that's great.
You
Yeah.
celebrate those small moments,
Yeah.
because and what I'm receiving from you is because in the celebration of those small moments, you are slowly rebuilding and rebuilding and rebuilding and rebuilding, and you are still becoming the person you were meant to be without knowing all of these other things were going to happen in your life,
Yes.
because
Thank
your journey is millions and millions and millions of people who don't have a voice or feel like they don't have a voice.
Oh,
It's
Tim,
their
thank you
journey
for
too.
saying that. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate
Listen,
that.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you for
Aw.
what you're pushing out into the world. And I know that, maybe if you had your choice, you'd be writing different things and pick a
Yeah.
different set of experiences, right?
Well, he's
Um,
given me a lot of material for sure.
Amen.
You know, they say that when your loved one dies, you embellish their characteristics. Like, oh, yeah, he
Mm.
wasn't really like that. But I could tell you honestly, and I'm sure he was just like that.
What I hope people latch onto, what I hope that they hold on to, are all of the yummy nuggets that you are sharing, that are seeds that, if people will just give a little bit of sunshine to the seed, they're going to grow and they're going to manifest, and
Yeah.
they're going to create. a pathway for people to get out of wherever they are.
Hmm. Yes, I hope so.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being here with us on this episode.
Thank you. God bless you, Tim.
WDON1204.com. Community focused, globally connected. Find us online at Coleman Global.